You're a successful professional and you are doing everything right. You go to your financial planning team and you ask for how you could optimize things further. They provide you with this beautiful Excel spreadsheet that shows exactly how they're going to save you taxes, and the plan works. There's a step memo, the lawyer gets involved, the accountant gets involved, and you execute on what they said even though you never really understood it. You save $15,000 in taxes from doing the transaction after you account for everybody's fees and everybody's paid, but you're still left feeling uneasy and confused, like, something happened that you didn't really understand, and now everybody who's been paid is gone, and years later you're still wondering about this strategy that you implemented. And maybe next time something like this happens, you'll think, what was the stress premium that I paid for this strategy? Hi everybody, my name is Mitchell Shields and I'm the founder and financial planner with Stillwater Financial Partners. Today we're going to talk about a concept that I'd never really heard about in my decade of working as a financial planner in Canada, and this is the concept that I've come to coin stress premium. This isn't a cost that you're going to see on your statements. This isn't a cost that's going to appear in the step memo that is done by your planning team to execute on these advanced tax strategies. This isn't going to show up in any of those robust, fancy insurance illustrations that are used to sell exotic strategies. But this is the hidden cost, kind of the iceberg under the iceberg, if you will, of the mental bandwidth, the cost of this ongoing stress, the constant questions of what did I even just do, and might I face CRA scrutiny? Or perhaps you do get a review letter from the CRA that causes you that extra stress. And years down the road wondering, if I could have gone back, maybe I wouldn't have executed on this, or remind me why we did this in the first place. This is something that several of my clients I've recognized have gone through over the course of their lives. And again, I've come to coin this as stress premium. What is the cost? Can we quantify the cost of this stress that you're taking on as an individual? It's something that, from my experience, early on in my career, I felt the pressure to learn all of these advanced strategies, get very strong, become a tax ninja, if you will, and be able to implement these robust, fancy tax strategies, perhaps as a way to impress the prospects or clients that I was dealing with, perhaps to impress my peers, or maybe just to deal with the imposter syndrome I was facing as a professional and working with clients and their wealth and their planning objectives. But something interesting has happened as I've professionally matured, if you will, and I've found that there really is an elegance and simplicity. And for all of the times that I've worked as part of a team and we've implemented these fancy strategies, and don't get me wrong, in some cases they were required, they were necessary, they were warranted, and they came with great outcomes. But I've always been challenged and started to question the years later when I'm talking to a client who doesn't really remember the tax savings, who still sees that their financial plan is well above where it should be and would be still ahead if we hadn't implemented those strategies. But now they're facing pesky letters from the CRA, or perhaps just coming back to me with a question over and over again about what did I even do? This is something that I see often actually with one of my clients at my current practice, that years before we started working together, they went through what would be called a surplus stripping strategy, or a pipeline, which is essentially closed off for the most part as of now and not doable. And at the time it made perfect sense. He came into a position where he hadn't been taking funds out of his corporation on a regular basis, and he was requiring an immediate injection of a large amount of capital, a large amount of personal dollars. And his two options were take out a dividend from the corporation and pay dividend tax rates, or go through this robust strategy of surplus stripping and create a capital gain. On paper, on Excel, in the planning software, the surplus strip made perfect sense. The tax lawyer got involved. He executed on his part, the accountants executed on their part, but this transaction was done in a silo and it really didn't consider other elements of the financial plan that it was influencing. And now 3 years later, there's some questions about his and his wife's salary continuation and whether there's bona fide employment arrangements in place. It's become very difficult to qualify for new debt and is leaving him in a position of strain and stress. And frankly, every time we talk now, he's asking me to re-explain what he even did. He doesn't understand the strategy, and nor should he. I distinctly remember the first time I actually read about this particular strategy. I read about it 6 times before I wrote in the margin, I just don't get it. Mind you, I get it now, and it took a lot of exposure. But it's not for the clients or the individuals or the families in Canada to understand this. And as they're professionals, they're turning to us for guidance. And often I find that the industry is quick to perhaps justify fees or genuinely feel like this would put them into a better financial position, which again, it did in a silo in this particular case. But again, comes with all of these extra layers of stress and complexity that doesn't get considered, which is exactly why I've coined the term stress premium. And when I'm thinking about comparing 2 different approaches, the approach of elegant simplicity and the approach of more advanced tax or estate strategy, this is something that I've started to talk about with my clients to say, well, let's do our best to quantify the cost of stress that this would implement on your life. How many professional hours are we going to introduce is one question, of course, right? What are the actual fees to implement this? What is the ongoing administration of this strategy when it comes to additional professional hours? Sure, we can quantify that a little bit easier. But how many of your hours as a professional are you going to be spending thinking, worrying, or just generally stressing about this? And how can we quantify that? Is it as simple as taking an estimate of how many hours you're going to put into thinking about this and multiplying it by your professional fee, perhaps? Is it a question of what would you pay to avoid a single letter from the CRA? Is it $1,000 that you would pay every single year to guarantee that you're not reviewed or audited? Is it $5,000? I don't know. I know that clients of mine who have received CRA letters just questioning $400 have a visceral reaction and all of a sudden are paying professional fees to review and question and just to get their answers. And does that put them into a better position when if they had just gone the simpler route, they would be in the same position, albeit potentially with a few extra hours of sleep? What is the opportune cost of worrying about this as a professional who can bill hourly or who can build something new for their business or who can be spending their time focusing on family and things of that variety? How much could you have earned personally in that same time you spent in boardroom meetings or reviewing things, perhaps nodding along to pretend that you understood what they were talking about? And this is a question that I'm starting to ask people. I'm starting to ask my clients and prospective clients who think that Stillwater Financial Partners might be the home for them. I'm asking them, how much do they value the avoidance of stress? If an elegantly simple solution can accomplish their goals, is that the solution that they would prefer? Perhaps they have an appetite for a little bit more risk and complexity. Perhaps they like to do the joust with the CRA on a regular basis. And having an understanding of those advanced strategies is important. I think it's also important because it allows you to see the potential risks of these strategies. And you can't take it on face value. A lot of the time we're locking in for years and years and years of potential liability or fear or worry, and it's not fair for the individual or family to carry that weight long term after we've all patted ourselves on the back for a job well done. So what I would challenge the viewers of this video, and thank you so much for being one of them and entertaining perhaps the ramblings of a madman, but what I would ask is, the next time you're faced with one of these complex strategies or an investment approach that doesn't make sense to you, or whatever the case may be, additional documentation, structures, the introduction of a trust, ask the professional you're working with, what is my after stress rate of return? In my opinion, that's a pretty important variable to get to. They likely won't have an answer, nor should they necessarily, but open up the conversation and start to think about these things. What would I pay to remove stress from my life? That's a question I'm starting to ask. It's a question that I'm taking very serious for my own personality and for my own personal life. So challenge these strategies, challenge these structures. If it's too good to be true, it might be. Work with a financial planner who strives to understand you and your values beyond just a risk tolerance assessment. What is your appetite for stress? Let's get to the bottom of that. Let's decide if we want to introduce complex elements, and at times it will be required. But let's look for the most elegantly simple solution first that provides you the most peace of mind, and that sounds like a win in my book.